For today's lesson, we're going to look at time, and specifically we're going to look at the 12-hour clock versus the 24-hour clock, and we'll also look at SI notation. So first we have some definitions. The 12-hour clock, this is the standard form of time that is used in North America throughout the day. That's what you're used to seeing. So you might see times like this: 12 a.m., that would be midnight, or 8:45 a.m., usually around the start of school time, 12 p.m. lunchtime, or just a time at night, 9:37 p.m. And we use AM and PM for that tells us if it's in the morning or in the afternoon or evening. For the 24-hour clock, this is a form of time that does not use AM or PM, and it's used in most countries in Europe as well as several other countries around the world. It's also commonly used in the military and tourism industries. So if there is no AM or PM, then there has to be another way of identifying whether it's earlier in the day or later at night. And so because there's 24 hours in a day, the very start of the day, so right at midnight when the day officially begins, that time is represented like this, 0000, because there's been no hours and no minutes have passed. It's the very first second of a new day. And then as time goes on, you just add the hours and minutes to it. And this is where we start to get some different looking times like this, like 21:37, but we'll get more into that later. SI notation, or we might refer to it as metric notation. This is a very specific way of writing down times or dates. So SI notation of time looks like this. The H stands for hours, M is minutes, and S is in seconds. So if you want a very specific time, like 4:32 and 15 seconds, you write it like this, and it's important to include the 0 in front. You would have 2 digits for each section. So 2 digits for the hours, 2 digits for the minutes, and 2 digits for the seconds. So this time here says 32 minutes and 15 seconds past 4 o'clock. So 32 minutes, 15 seconds past 4 o'clock. The SI notation for date goes year, month, day. Now it's important to write down, see there's 4 Y's here, that means there needs to be 4 digits for the year. If there's only 2 digits, if I just had, say, 20, 06, 08 here, then we don't know if it's from the year 2020 or the year 1920 or 1820. So we put the whole year, all 4 digits, so we know exactly what year we're talking about. And then the month, so 06 is the 6 months, that's June, and the 8th day. So this date here, 2020, 06, 08, says June 8th, 2020. So like I mentioned before, we typically use the 12-hour clock in North America. AM is used for the first 12 hours of the day. So that's from midnight to just before noon, to like 11:59 AM. And then PM is used for right at noon, for 12 o'clock noon, until the minute before midnight, so until 11:59 p.m. Reading a clock. So let's start over here. We've got an hour hand, a minute hand, then there'll also be a second hand, which isn't shown in this one. Remember that a clock is, or a 12-hour clock is divided up into 12 sections, so each section represents an hour. Okay? And so the hands that go around, they will point at one of these numbers, and it could represent, say, this one 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. You don't really know just by looking at the clock. And then the little dashes in between the hours, we can use those to help us determine the minutes. So every number here is 5 minutes, okay, when you're looking at the minute hand. So if you went a quarter of the way around the clock, that would represent 15 minutes. If you go halfway, that's 30 minutes. And if you go 3/4 of the way around the clock, that's 45 minutes. And then if it goes all the way around, well, that's 60 minutes or 1 hour. So in that time, the minute hand will have gone all the way around the clock once, and the hour hand will have moved from one number, say 10, to the next, 11. So here's some more examples of reading a clock. So this one, the hour hand is pointing at 8. The minute hand is pointing at 12, so that means it's 8 o'clock and there's been no minutes past 8, so it's just 8 o'clock on the dot. Okay? This will be 8 o'clock It's pointing at the 8, and then the minute hand's pointing at 3, so that's 15 minutes past 8, or quarter after 8. And you notice that the hour hand isn't pointing directly at the 8. That's because it should be about a quarter of the way in between the 8 and the 9. 8:30, or half past 8, when the hour hand is halfway between the 8 and the 9, and the minute hand's pointing at the 6. And quarter to 9, you'll have the hour hand pointing about 3/4 of the way between 8 and 9, and the minute hand's pointing at the 9, because there's 15 minutes left until it reaches 9 o'clock. So this just breaks it down a little more in depth here. So it's showing how in between each number there's 5 minutes. So between the 12 and the 1, that's the first 5 minutes of the hour. And then between the 12 and the 2, well, that would be 10 minutes, and so on. It goes by intervals of 5 all the way to 60 minutes when you're back up at the 12 again. The second hand here, represented by the red line, it can be read the same way as the minute hand can, because there's 60 seconds in a minute, just like there's 60 minutes in an hour. So whichever number the second hand is pointing at, that will tell us how many seconds. So if it's pointing at the 2, well, that's 5, 10 little dashes away from the 12. So that's 10 seconds into this minute. Okay. So when you're trying to find out what second it's at, then you can just count by 5s. Or if you know that 6 is 30 seconds, then you can go backwards. And so if I go back one spot, that's going to be 25 seconds. Now when it's sort of in between the numbers, you sort of have to look at the dashes in between. Right now this is 30 seconds, this is 35 seconds, so it looks like it's pointing right about 33 seconds. But when we're telling someone the time, we're not going to be telling them the exact time to the second, or even to the exact minute most of the time. So we have to do a quick rounding. So this one, if we look at the second hand, if it's not quite at the 30-second mark, then you would round down. Okay, so to about 9:57. When the second hand goes past the 30 seconds, then we round up to the next minute, so to 5:18 in this case. We do the same thing with minutes. So if I was telling someone what time it was and it was 9:57, well, chances are I would just tell them it's just about 10 o'clock, right? I'm not going to give them a very specific time. Or this one, it's about 5:15. And for the 24-hour clock, remember that it starts at midnight. That's when the day starts. So we represent that with 00:00:00. That means there's been no hours, no minutes, and no seconds have passed into this new day. So that's right on the dot, right at midnight. And that will go all the way to 23:59:59, which is 1 second before midnight the following day. Okay. Now, here's an example of, say, a 24-hour clock. You don't see these very often, but it does show you what the AM sort of number, how it corresponds with the PM number. Remember, in 24-hour clocks, you don't use AM or PM. However, if it's in the morning, you're going to be using one of the numbers on the inside. Or if it's, say, past midnight and it's really early in the morning, yeah, you'd use one of these numbers on the inside. And then these bigger numbers from 13 to 24, that would be for the afternoon into the evening. So this clock right now is showing 6:15 because the hour hand's pointing between the 6 and the 7. So it's with the hour is going to be 6 something, and the minute hand's pointing at the 3, which is 15 minutes past the hour here. So 6:15. However, if it's 6:15 at night, then a 24-hour clock would represent that as 18:15. We look at this number down here. And this one over here, this shows 9:45 in the morning. Now a 24-hour clock, it looks the same. With the small difference is that there's a 0 in front, and we don't add that AM. So 24-hour clock, you don't use the AM or PM sign after the time. So, like I just mentioned, anytime before noon looks similar. So 8:45 a.m. just looks at like 08:45. 11:30 a.m. equals 11:30. But the times after noon, so the PM times, those are the ones that look quite a bit different. So say 2:45 p.m. on a 24-hour clock would be 14:45 because it really is the like 14 hours after midnight and 45 minutes. 9:50 p.m. would be 21:50. So there is a quick trick for converting, say, 12-hour times into 24-hour times. All you need to do is add 12 to the hour. So 2 plus 12 is 14, or 9 plus 12 is 21. And you can also use that method for going backwards. If you have the 24-hour clock and you want to know what that is in a 12-hour clock, then just subtract 12 from the hours. Right? Now that just works if it's in the PM. Okay, so if it's 13 up to 23, then you can just subtract 12. If it's like this time here, 08:45, well, we know it's in the morning because it's in the first 12 hours, so we don't need to subtract 12. You just subtract the 12 if it's in the afternoon and it's past 12 o'clock.